Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining Focus today. It's a pleasure to have our special guest with us here today. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat box. Michael will present and he will take questions at the end. So please stay off camera and muted up until the end. Michael, please take it away.
Thank you, Jade. Good morning, Focus families. My name is Mike Kipniss. I'm a senior partner with the Piedmont Group here in Atlanta. I live in Alpharetta. Our office is down at the perimeter. And I've been in the financial services industry for over 35 years. My connection to Focus and my special needs families directly was Kurt and Suzanne Smith a number of years ago when their son Trevor was growing up and involved in a lot of your programs. Kurt and Suzanne are good friends of our families and of our family, and we've really enjoyed time with them and Trevor. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the planning for a family who has a special needs son or daughter, niece or nephew. About 9 years ago, I was at the Roswell United Methodist Church and was at a job networking event and got introduced to Diane Prindle of Briggs and Associates. You may or may not be familiar with that nonprofit here in Atlanta, and they find meaningful jobs for adults with special needs. And I was introduced to a young man by the name of Aaron Niederhofer, who had just graduated Marshall University with a finance degree. And we went through a interviewing process, and I hired Aaron to be my data mining guru, as he calls himself. And he is my right-hand man for my LinkedIn presence and does some great work for me. He's been with me for 9 years now. And Aaron and his mom, Dorian, is a great family and a great story. And I'm proud to have a highly functional autistic young man in my employ. I'm going to go through some slides about the planning process. There's nothing on this discussion that is going to be a salesy type discussion. It's really the thought process that goes into planning for a family as the parents get older and how they want to provide for their children as they get older and make sure that their family is going to be taken care of for many, many years to come. My assistant Wendy is going to be scrolling through. So Wendy, can you scroll it? This is our normal disclaimer. It's not legal or tax counsel. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'll probably reference those types of individuals during the talk. And again, like Jade said, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat room, or if you want to wait till the end of the slides, we can certainly have an open discussion after that. Thanks, Wendy. So here's the agenda for today. What is a life care plan? What's the timeline? What are some common misconceptions? What are some comprehensive life care planning steps? Letter of intent and how to get started. So what is a life care plan? How does your dependent need one? How do you create one? It's a coordinated program of future care planning, financial and legal strategies for people with special needs and their families. So there are some timetables. As many of you know, if you have already done some planning or are aware of government programs, there's certain things that you should be thinking of doing before your child reaches age 18. Medicaid waivers, Social Security survivor benefits. There's early intervention from birth to age 3, IEPs, which are individual education plans, starting at age 3. Transition planning should be between ages 14 and 16, and then trying to build a legal structure to protect your assets and your child's assets so that the most capital can get to the ones you love with the least amount of red tape. At age 18 and after, there's supplemental security income called SSI. We start talking about guardianship and alternatives to guardianship. When you think of a guardian, typically you think of an adult individual that would take care of your child if something were to happen to you, if you got sick or hurt, or if, God forbid, you passed away. We always bring up the legal aspects. I think having the right attorney, and specifically an attorney that does special needs planning, is very important. If at the end of this discussion, you would like me to make introductions to folks I work with throughout Metro Atlanta and even in other states, I'd be happy to make those introductions for you. If you have a will that may be in good order, but if the will does not address special needs planning, it probably needs a little tweaking. Talk about Medicaid and Medicare, CDB, which is Children's Disability Benefits, and DAC is Disabled Adult Child Benefits. You've got Social Security disability income in certain cases and college in certain cases. Here are some common misconceptions about the planning of your family situation if you have a special needs child. Some people don't want to get around to it because they think it's going to be expensive and it's not affordable. Others have the opinion that things will always work out. Someone would step in financially if needed. The word trust or a trust account has a connotation that trust planning is for the wealthy, and that is not the case when it comes to planning for a special needs child. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a will that's fairly generic, that we call it the I love you will. If you pass away, your spouse gets everything. If your spouse passes away, you get everything. A simple will is better than no will, but most wills need to have some clauses in there that address the special needs planning and potentially a special needs trust. Others think that the brothers and sisters of the special needs child will jump in. Back to my own personal situation with my employee, Aaron. He has a sister and a brother that really don't want anything to do with him. His mom is divorced, so he was pretty much raised by a single mom. And providing for that child has to be more creative than just assuming that the brother and sister will step in. Some steps in the life care planning process. We have 10 of them here. Try to address the primary issues. Create a life care plan vision. This could be on a yellow pad. It just could be some hopes, dreams, and goals for your family, for your child. If guardianship is not a solid approach, if there's no traditional family members that would step in if needed, you sometimes have to look outside your immediate family, and that's where maybe a trust or a corporate trustee would be involved. Identifying financial resources, not only what you might be receiving or would be receiving through government programs, but inheritances. There may be grandparents involved that want to be giving assets that would ultimately benefit the child. And you want to be very careful on where these assets get placed so as to not have too many assets in the child's name that would potentially disqualify them from things like Social Security or government programs. And actually look at the costs of planning. In the event of a child growing up and needing something like a community living situation, there are places in Metro Atlanta, there's places in other states. Unfortunately, these are not inexpensive, and some of them have waiting lists, and you probably need to check into those facilities well before the child is of majority, and knowing your child's personality and needs is very important in that aspect. The letter of intent is really, it's not necessarily a legal document, but it's things that you might want to lay out for any caregiver or caregivers that might be in charge of your child if you're no longer in the picture. Could be things like, they like 3 bowls of Cheerios in the morning. That gets their day off on a good start. It could be, certain TV programs that really help them get through their day. It could be any kind of, quirky situation that your child needs on a daily basis. As far as caring for the child, sleeping arrangements, what he or she doesn't like or need in regards to putting a child to sleep and getting them ready for bed, things like that. That's what's usually included in a letter of intent. Number 7 is the legal instruments, which we'll see a lot of. This is specific documents, the will, the estate plan, any trust that may be set up for the benefit of your son or daughter, niece or nephew that is going to need specific instructions for the caregivers. I'm sure you all have heard of special needs trusts and ABLE accounts, which are certain ways to keep assets for the benefit of the child with special needs, but not visible to our friends at the IRS, so that you might end up getting disqualified. I can only pay my employee Aaron a certain dollar amount per month, or that would jeopardize his disability income from Social Security and other government programs. I think it's always good to have a circle of friends and family that are near and dear to your heart, that know your child. No one's going to know your child as well as you will, but to meet with these individuals and to see if they would be willing to be involved in the planning if something were to happen to you unexpectedly and you want your son or daughter to have the best care possible. This may seem a little cumbersome to review your plan annually. I'm not necessarily saying don't review it annually, but certainly whenever there's some sort of life event, change in job status, you move, income goes up, income goes down, other family situations that come up, those are usually triggering events where you would want to review your plan and potentially update it and make any changes necessary. I know a lot of estate attorneys, and they usually say every election year or every Olympics, which is every 4 years, you should certainly review your estate plan and your life care plan as well. Here's the letter of intent in more detail. Like I said before, it's not a legal document, but the court would consider it in the event that one of the parents were to pass away, and to try and determine the best care for your special needs child. Hopes and dreams, obviously very important in this letter. I think this needs to be updated regularly as your child ages, and like any child aging, their personalities change, their mannerisms change, their ability to deal with different types of people change. So these are things that you should be keeping up to date in your letter of intent. You want to leave explicit and specific instructions that would familiarize anyone with the individual. I would hope that it wouldn't be a complete stranger, but you want to make it straightforward. It might be 10 bullet points. It may be longer than that, but that's what the letter of intent is designed for. It's a working document. It's going to change over time. Starting sooner than later makes a lot of sense. Maybe this needs to be updated at least once a year or as needed, as we talked about earlier. There are templates available. If after the call you guys want me to forward any of these out, I could send them to Jade and she could distribute them to you. As far as questions on that, let me know. And you really want input from everyone because people view this situation differently. Some people are better with money. Some people are better with the caregiving. Some people are better with, taking on the role of a parent. So there's multiple people involved and everyone should have a defined role if possible. And they may be completely dependent of different triggering events. So keep that in mind as well. How to get started. Like I said at the outset, I've been in the financial planning business for over 35 years. If you sit with a young couple and they have child or children and you want to do basic planning, you typically review any benefits that the parent has through their employee or through their employer. Company benefits should be factored into any kind of planning. If the parents are self-employed or work from home and don't have benefits through a company, they may want to go out and look at financial advisors that could help them with investing assets, managing monies, insurance planning, and the like. So that's really no different than any kind of planning process. You want to set out goals, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, longer. And hopefully during that planning, when you structure any specific plans for the child with special needs, it'll go hand in hand with your own plan for when you want to retire and when you want to move to Florida or move to the mountains. Determine the future for your loved one with special needs. This is a number of different topics here. My friends Kurt and Suzanne Smith found a place for Trevor up in Kentucky, and they were just up there last weekend visiting Trevor. So, they did a lot of research on the facilities that were available and what they felt would be a good environment for their son. Obviously, education is important, and just because the child is getting older and maybe aging out of traditional schooling, you probably want, ongoing learning to be involved in any facility or living arrangement that your son or daughter is going to be taking a look at. I think employment, occupational is important. People want to feel that they're involved in the community. They want to feel like they're earning a living, even if it's money for, snacks or Coca-Cola or video games or whatever the child or adult child would need. I think having a facility or being in a situation where the individual has the opportunity to work, if need be, just for their own feeling involved, I think that's a great situation. Number 4, social and recreational is probably one of the most important. You want your child to be happy. You want them to live the best life that they can live and be in an environment that, you feel that they're safe. You feel that they're being loved and cared for well. So I think the social and recreational is very important. And obviously you want medical care to be readily available. You don't want any living situation to be too far from medical professionals. So those are what I would say some of the top planning needs that we have for families. Try to identify your financial resources. I have yet to meet a family that has too much money for planning for their child. Children are expensive with or without special needs. So a lot of times a family may not have the assets to be able to afford an outside living arrangement or a community home. And that is going to be difficult. There may be grandparents that will be leaving some money, and there may be some inheritances out there, but the grandparents may be willing to gift some of those assets while they're still alive, and get some tax benefits if they truly understand what the family needs day to day, week to week, month to month. I talked a little bit about employer and government benefits. You know, I will always encourage people to pursue any government benefits that might be available. I know it's not an easy task. It's a lot of sitting on hold. It's a lot of 800 numbers, and you may spend half a day and not even get anything accomplished. But you know, knowing what your son or daughter is going to be eligible for and not losing out on any governments is very important. Talked about the legal planning and special needs trusts, which may or may not be suitable for everyone on the call, and the ABLE account, which allows assets to some level to accumulate without taxes for the benefit of the child. These are all financial resources that should be considered, and the family needs to make all caregivers involved aware of. Guardianship and alternatives. Like I said before, not every family has the ideal situation. I have a good friend of mine who's now almost 60 years old. His older brother, Timmy, is about 66. He's had Down syndrome his whole life. He's lived a really happy life. There's 3 other siblings that Timmy has. And, you know, after mom and dad passed away in their 80s and 90s, it was an easy transition. Timmy moved into his sister Kathy's house. They had put together enough financially that it wasn't going to impact the way she lived, and she opened her door graciously for her brother. That's not always the case. If you have a small family, or if it's an only child, or there aren't aunts and uncles or grandparents, you've got to maybe look outside the family and look at, you know, close family friends that have grown up with the child and know him or her very well and are willing to take on this responsibility. Some alternatives to guardianship could be a corporate trustee to help manage the money. The guardian may be very good with the child, but maybe not so good with the money aspect. And you can have a corporate trustee manage the assets for the benefit of the child. Mass Mutual, the company that I represent, has its own corporate trustee relationship, and it does give you peace of mind that you have multiple sets of eyes watching over the assets so that they're managed appropriately, and ideally the assets don't run out before the child's life expectancy. Special needs trusts, if you have not heard of them, or it's a topic that trust word makes you a little uncomfortable, it's just another piece to an estate plan and a will. It doesn't make sense in every case, but it's a separate trust document. It's a legal document that would potentially hold assets or life insurance proceeds, so that at the time of need, when the special needs individual were to need the assets, they would be readily available and they would not be subject to taxes on the way out if it's properly designed. So it's a good way to manage resources. It protects you from losing out on government benefits because it sits inside the trust. The trust has its own tax ID number, like a Social Security number, and that trust can be managed by an individual or individuals. You can have co-trustees. And like I said before, a corporate trustee, I wouldn't say is the last resort, but is certainly a possibility if there are no logical friends or family members that are particularly good with money. It's also a good place for any supplemental funds. Instead of grandma and grandpa wanting to write a check to their grandson or granddaughter with special needs, they put it in the trust account, and it's going to get more bang for the buck by not having it show up in that individual's bank account or social security number. ABLE accounts, ABLE, Achieving a Better Life Experience, is the acronym. Signed into law in 2014. Allows eligible individuals with disabilities to have a tax-free savings account. It was modeled after 529 college accounts, and they kind of flip-flop as far as what people call them these days. But these assets are typically invested. Some are in mutual funds, some are in just bank reserves, and those dollars are not going to be seen by the government or impact any type of government funding that the child with special needs would be eligible for. Funds can be used for qualified disability-related expenses. Requirement is the disability or situation for your child has to have occurred before age 26. It can be over age 26 as long as the disability was diagnosed prior to turning age 26. If the age criteria is met and the individual is already receiving Social Security or SSDI, you become automatically eligible. If the individual is not receiving SSI or SSDI, you must meet the Social Security's definition and criteria of significant and functional limitations and receive a letter of certification from a licensed physician. And knowing a lot of the families at Focus, that's typically not a difficult barrier to get through. ABLE accounts have a maximum contribution as of 2020 of $15,000. That's per account. The total limit over time could be made to an ABLE account is subject to the state that you live in. And it goes hand in hand with how 529 savings accounts for college are calculated. Some states have limits even in excess of $300,000. So if someone's giving $15,000 per year, it would take 20 years to get up to that $300,000 level. Working account owners who do not participate in an employer-sponsored retirement plan could contribute more than the $15,000. As of 2020, that was $12,490. So if you have a 401k at Coca-Cola, but you choose not to participate in that retirement account and you want to put more money into the ABLE account than the $15,000, there's another loophole that you can get another $12,490 on an annual basis into that account. If the SSI's recipient goes over $100,000, SSI benefit is suspended till that falls below $100,000. However, that does not affect Medicaid in that calculation. There's a website there as far as up-to-date information on ABLE accounts. It's www.ablenrc.org. And that will have pretty much everything you need to do any more research on these accounts. The importance of an integrated plan. Creating a life care plan that provides for both your own needs and those of your child's can feel overwhelming, making it all the more important to assemble a team of trusted advisors. Okay, the advisors can be, but are not limited to, financial professionals that have a background in special needs. I'm a chartered special needs consultant. I have that professional designation. I'm one of 12 in the state of Georgia with a CHSNC, a Chartered Special Needs Consultant designation. I'm not saying I'm the person that you want to talk to, but someone who's had experience working with families who have special needs I would say you should interview 2 or 3 different folks, try to line up someone with the skill set and the personality and the bedside manner would always be helpful. I encourage you to talk to attorneys who have a specialty in special needs planning. That's not a closing attorney that helped you buy your last house. It's typically an estate planning attorney that works with families who have a special needs situation. If you don't have an accountant, there are certain accountants that have specialties in this area. But it's always good to have another pair of eyes from a tax standpoint. So I'd recommend that part of your planning team includes an accountant, bankers. I know we live in a day and age of, ATMs, and you don't really go to a bank and go into a branch, but in this particular case, it wouldn't hurt to have a relationship with a bank and a banker in the event you needed to move assets. Social workers and other advocates for your child's particular needs, obviously very important. And being surrounded by the best medical care possible is the utmost importance, I think, for any family who's got a child with special needs. I'm done with my slides, Jade, and I try to go fairly quickly. I think Jade said we were recording this, so if I went too fast or you want to go back through it, that's fine. And Jade has probably shared with you my contact information and phone number and email, and if not, I'm sure she can get it out to you. But I appreciate you all jumping on the Zoom call. I'd much rather do this in person, but we live in a world of Zooming these days. It probably is easier for a lot of you to jump on a Zoom call than, drive to the office or try to go to a facility. So I really appreciate you all joining. I see there's one chat. I don't know if Jade, you're going to read that, or maybe
Thanks, Michael. Yes, I'm posting your contact information in the chat as well, but we do have a couple of questions. The first question is, can some pay his trust in a special needs trust? I don't know if that question needs more detail.
Say that again. You cut in and out.
The question they wrote is, can some pay his trust for a special needs trust? We may need some more explanation on that question. The next question. Oh, sorry, Michael. No,
can someone other than the individual pay for put the funds in the special needs trust? Yes, it's a gifting strategy like any other gift. You can gift up to $15,000 per year. Any individual, family member, otherwise can help fund the trust. As far as paying for the legal documents, that can also be paid for by somebody other than the immediate family. There are some tax deductible benefits for doing an estate plan. So if the estate plan costs $1,500, it includes a special needs trust. Some of that fee for the estate plan and the lawyer is deductible.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is, I have a trust but no tax ID. Is that possible? How do I get a tax ID?
It is possible. Some people set up a trust with one of the parents' social security numbers. I would prefer that the trust has its own tax ID number. That can be established at the financial institution. A bank can request a tax ID number, an insurance company, a lawyer, an accountant. Usually takes a couple of days to get a tax ID number. If you ever were in business for yourself and you want to set up a tax ID number for, Nothing Bundt Cakes or a company that you're running, you could file for a tax ID number with the financial institution that's holding any of your assets. It's not complicated.
Thank you, Michael. Another question, which I think you just answered, is, can an employer pay the trust instead of an individual?
Can an employer
Correct.
Is that the question? I mean, employers give a lot of money away. If you go to a Braves game, there's a raffle, a 50-50 raffle, and there's lots and lots of employers that are very charitably inclined. I'm not going to answer that question directly. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but that's probably more of a tax question, depending on the employer and how they are going to track that contribution. But a trust in and of itself can accept assets from pretty much anything, individual or corporate.
Next question is, can you expand on your company being able to be a trustee for a special needs trust?
Okay, so Mass Mutual, which is one of about 70 different companies I represent, has a corporate trust department. And even though it's based in Springfield, Massachusetts, if I make an introduction to our corporate trust department for $400 a year, you can have Mass Mutual manage the funds. Sometimes they have certain financial requirements. I know that Wells Fargo and SunTrust, now Truist, I think they have a minimum requirement of $1 million in assets, which may be difficult for a family to have. So a corporate trustee, if whoever's asking that question wants to have a side conversation with me and go over their situation, I'd be certainly happy to tell you whether we would be a good fit or if there's other corporate trustees. But it's typically for someone who wants either another pair of eyes to watch over the money, and or there's no immediate family members or close family friends that want to be responsible for the management of those assets. Excuse me.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is, I used an attorney but never went to the bank.
I used an attorney and never went to the bank.
It's okay. We might need some more explanation on that if you'd like to retype that question in. Another question is, do you know a local corporate trustee?
Again, I think it's all individual. Whoever's asking that specific question, the answer is yes. There's Cumberland Trust down in Buckhead. There's Wilmington Trust over in the Galleria. My trust company isn't in Georgia, but because I'm licensed in Georgia, I can give you access to the Mass Mutual corporate trustee lawyers and planning departments. So for whoever's asking that question, feel free to shoot me an email after the call and we can set up a quick call and I'll try and point you in the right direction.
Thank you, Michael. If anyone else has any other burning questions, now would be the time to add it to the chat so that Michael can answer for us.
And again, if you don't feel comfortable asking a general question in this format, my email is mskipniss@financialguide.com. You've got my phone number, office and cell phone number there, and I'm right at 1050 Crown Point Parkway here in Dunwoody. So, you know, I've gotten used to these Zoom calls and phone calls since COVID. So I don't charge a fee for my planning. If anybody's wondering, you know, does Mike do this out of the goodness of the heart? For the most part, yes. If there is a situation where a specific financial solution makes sense and I can deliver it to you, then I would be compensated through whatever insurance or investment outfit that would help execute that. But I proudly do a lot of pro bono work in this area because I feel that the families that have this kind of situation upon them deserve a lot of help, and they don't need to have a an hourly meter running to say, well, here's my bill for a 45-minute phone call. You'll never get a surprise from my Kipniss.
Well, thank you, Michael. We don't have any other questions, so we greatly appreciate your time and your knowledge today. Everyone has your contact information if they need to reach out to you. Otherwise, we certainly look forward to seeing you again and sharing all your knowledge with our families.
Yeah, I hope to see some of you Saturday down at the, what are we calling a festa? What's it called? BBQ? What?
It's our annual BBQ.